Yeah.
Okay.
All right, our show has started now.
It's on? It's
Yes.
recording?
Yes.
Hello. This is Gabe and Zav's film review and film news show,
Yep.
which we have entitled My Dinner with Gabe.
I think that's a working title, right? I mean, we can always
episode 4.
change that.
I
title.
like it.
You like it? Okay.
I think it's cute because
All right.
you came up with it. It's
All right.
adorable.
I just wonder if it's like over people's heads. How many people know about the reference? I don't know.
A lot of people.
Okay. All right.
It's a pretty famous movie.
Okay.
And it's probably one of the 10 most famous art films that ever reached the mainstream. Anyway, so we're going to start this off with some box office news. We didn't have a show last week, so we are going to cover box office for the last 2 weeks and all movie news and review news for the last 2 weeks. And 2 weeks ago, on the weekend of April 27th through the 29th, we had Think Like a Man, which was for the second week at number one with $17 million with a grand total of $60 million. Unexpected, but good for that movie. I have not seen it. I have heard it's actually a pretty good romantic comedy, and it's better than it should be. Pirates, the Band of Misfits, opened up second with a disappointing 11.1. Aardman Animation still can't find a hit. Number 3 was The Hunger Games with 10.8. Its 6-week total of $372 million. Fourth was The Lucky One with 10.8. Its second-week total, 39.4. Opening fifth with an extremely unexpected and extremely disappointing opening was The 5-Year Engagement with 10.6. No one saw that coming. Safe, the Jason Statham Lionsgate film opened up with another disappointing 7.8. Statham has been losing his steam at the box office, and these films that I think he signed a contract with years ago are just coming out one after another, seemingly 2 a year, and they don't seem to be having much clout with audiences, though it's possible that on DVD, the sales and the cult status of him as a rising action icon might make up for this, and overseas totals have evened it out. So Lionsgate doesn't seem to be disappointed with him yet. The Raven opened up with an extremely pathetic 7.2. Not unexpected in my book. That movie looked terrible. It got terrible reviews, and it was a very atypical April horror release. Something that was shelved for a long time, reshot, and then thrown out because it had nowhere else to go. Chimpanzee, its second week, earned 5.2, bringing it up to 18.9. That's a good little success story for the Disney documentary. Ninth was The Three Stooges with 5.1. Third 3-week total, 36.9. Cabin in the Woods was 10th with 4.6. 3-week total, an underwhelming 34.7. I feel bad for that movie because I think it should be grossing much more money because I really liked it and I thought it was an unexpected turn for the horror genre. The 4 new releases that opened this week all came in with a thud. Nothing earned a whole lot of money, and nothing overthrew Think Like a Man, which should not be number one at the box office for a second week in a row. The 5-Year Engagement is especially baffling because Jason Segel is a really, really engaging, really entertaining presence at movies. He's one of my favorite actors, at least in current cinema. I think he's funny, I think he's natural, and I think he's just likable, and audiences find him likable. And so this, especially with Judd Apatow, his track record in terms of making money, but also at making good, engaging mainstream films and mainstream comedies that are unexpectedly intelligent, has been extremely successful. I don't think he's made a dud in the whole bunch that he's ever produced, directed or produced. And this one I've heard is a little bit lighter on the gross out fare, and so it was meant to target women and men with a word of mouth buzz in concurrent weeks. It was expected to open at number 1, so I was a little surprised that this opened at 5th with a very small taking. I believe that's pretty much it. The Statham record has been pretty bad as of late. Killer Elite opened with 9.4. Last year, Crank High Voltage opened with 7, and The Mechanic opened last year with 11.4. These aren't bad action films. They're not even bad movies, but his track record is really slowly sinking, and he's becoming less of a viable action star when compared to someone like Will Smith, when compared to all these other action stars that actually sell tickets, at least in their first week. with the exception of the Expendables, this guy just isn't pulling in money anymore. So I think this might be the beginning of the end, especially with his relationship with Lionsgate.
Uh-huh.
And your box office for the week of May 3rd through May 5th. The Avengers opened up with a record-setting $207 million. No one saw this coming. People knew this movie was going to gross tons of money, but oh my God, this is just out of control. This is crazy. So I feel really glad for this movie. I've heard nothing. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard nothing but great stuff from people who see one movie a year and people who see every movie that come out every year.
Do you know how much money it costs?
200. Oh, the estimates are actually ranging within hundreds of millions of dollars because the actual budget definitely came in over $200 million. But if you include advertising, if you include overseas advertising, literally there's about 10 different figures that you could rely on. And they're all, I mean, just anywhere over about 300 to 350 million is a pretty accurate ballpark on this one.
What does an average movie bring in?
In terms of box office?
Yeah.
Revenue?
Generally speaking.
Well, that's hard to say. About $70 million if you include like minor releases and small budgeted films. But a lot of movies cracking the $100 million mark is not that uncommon nowadays. And with the cost of advertising and the cost of just production, especially in the States, it is there's more and more flops. But they're always banking on the one hit or the two hits to make up for all the other. There's a lot of statements that were made, especially in the early 90s, about how even most of the movies you make throughout the year, your studio makes 18 movies a year. If 4 of those are really successful, that's a pretty good year.
Oh wow, okay. So that's because for me, it's all like these numbers are just crazy numbers. But go ahead, say what you're going to say.
Think Like a Man had 8.1 in its third week, just below it, still pretty much on the top of the box office.
8.1 what?
$million.
Oh, okay.
Hunger Games was third with 5.5. Pirate Band of Misfits was fourth with 5.5, bringing it up to... I'm sorry, I do not have that number right here. The Lucky One earned 5.3. The 5-year engagement earned $5 million, opening 6th at the box office. Its second week total, 19.1. Opening 7th was Safe with 2.6. Second week total, up to 13. The Raven was 8th with 2.6 million, bringing it up to 12. Chimpanzee was 9th with 2.4, bringing it up to 23. And 10th was The Three Stooges with 1.8, bringing its 4-week total up to 39.6. A little side note, the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel earned $737,000 only in 27 theaters. That movie's going to rise, especially with older word of mouth and the above 50 crowd. That's a pretty impressive figure. Now, with that, Avengers was the highest opening ever, leaving The Deathly Hallows Part 2 in the dust, which previously held the record with $169.2 million. It is the fastest movie to reach $100 million, fastest movie to reach $150 and $200 million. And it set new records for Saturday and Sunday grosses. Highest per theater gross average ever with $47,000. That's insane. Already ahead of Thor, Captain America, and the Incredible Hulk. Although those movies seem to be just side notes and they were like works of advertising for this movie. The fact that those movies, especially Captain America, were slight box office, not flops, but they were definitely unsuccessful. Minor disappointments is completely irrelevant with how much money this movie has made. Iron Man 2 and Iron Man being the exceptions in that category. Massive ad campaign, in this case, proved extremely successful. And already they have planned an Avengers 2. Not a surprise there. Movie news besides that.
And we're going to review that one, right? We're going to go to the Avengers. And
we are going to the Avengers. You and I, and I'm going to watch Zav, and he will fall asleep for 5 minutes during the movie because it's part of the experience. He will get some popcorn, and we will enjoy it, and he will discover that mainstream film does not suck as much as we think it does. Prometheus is rated R. That's part of the movie news. It is rated R. Ridley Scott's prequel to Alien. I'm very excited about that. Doesn't matter. It could still be a great film, but if that movie wants to be sick and as grotesque and as bold and brilliant as I think it could be, it needs to be a vicious, hard R like Alien and Aliens was before it. Avengers 2 is a go. Red 2, the sequel to the geriatric comedy Red, is a go. Guillermo del Toro has been picked up by Henson Studios to direct Pinocchio sometime in the next 2 years. They are making a sequel to Piranha 3D called Piranha 3, Double D, with David Hasselhoff as a lifeguard as one of the main characters in the film. I am looking forward to that. I personally liked the very bad but very awesome Piranha 3D. Thought it was one of the goriest and most and disturbing films I'd ever seen. Really stupid and really good. Opening this week, Dark Shadows, a hodgepodge of part comedy, part horror. Can't really decide what it is. If you want to see it, if you like the trailers, you're probably going to like this movie. I'm not going to stop you. No one's going to stop you. I want to see this movie, even though I know I'm going to be half disappointed by it. I like Tim Burton. I like Johnny Depp. Most people like Tim Burton and Johnny Depp. I've heard that this isn't anywhere near either of their full capabilities, but it looks like they're having fun when they made this. And sometimes that's really important for a mainstream film, that they don't get too caught up in making money and making something that's just unwatchable. That they made a movie that they wanted to see for their own reasons. They both love the show. And for fans of the original Dark Shadows and fans of just the sort of the family friendly weird, this is a great film to take kids to and for people to go to by themselves should they want to. God Bless America came out. Bobcat Goldthwait is back in the directing chair. This is a movie about a man who disgruntledly decides not to kill himself but to kill reality television stars and brings a teenager along with him. I want to see this movie. It sounds awesome. They're saying it's one of the darkest mainstream and darkest major releases in years. That it's vicious, it's insane, it's crazy, and that it's just completely intelligent. I'm glad that Bobcat is back. Girl in Progress is a forgettable, crappy teenage girl growing up cliched nonsense film, but I've heard that it has some heart and it has a little bit of wit. If you're going to go see this, no one's probably going to stop you. That's your movie news.
Oh, wow, perfect timing because Carl Bogner is supposed to call us in about 1 minute.
Carl Bogner is going to call. He's the head of the
and
UWM
today
film department.
We're doing our amazing, it's our Spielberg show.
Spielberg.
We watched Warhorse and Tintin, which came out 4 days apart from one another. And so we're going to talk mainly about Warhorse and Tintin, but we're going to talk about Spielberg in general because
this is our Spielberg show.
Because it's our Spielberg show.
It is. We've been planning this one for quite a while, and I got to say I have a little more anxiety about it than I've had at any of the other shows. They've just could have been winged, but the amount of research that it actually takes to learn about the full full picture of Spielberg, just as a director, and then when you factor in a producer, it's just it's mind-boggling.
And I would like to add that I personally am someone who didn't know a whole lot of Spielberg's work. Actually, I can do this. I didn't know a whole lot about Spielberg, and so I've seen his films, but I had never seen E.T. for example, and I got through the very beginning of Close Encounters, but I saw that years ago, but I hadn't really seen it. If I look at his filmography, there's a ton of Spielberg stuff that I haven't seen. So I am basically someone who doesn't really know Spielberg. I know him because he's just such a ubiquitous presence in our culture.
He's the film icon.
But at the same time, I guess I really didn't know as much as I know now about Spielberg. And so I'm speaking as kind of like a newbie in a way about this film director. But I think probably most people are a little bit that way. Would you say that they you think you know someone until you actually try to
I would definitely agree with that. I think the idea of Spielberg is actually more prevalent than who Spielberg really is. Yeah. That he, especially in the 80s when he started executive producing movies and they started saying Steven Spielberg presents or produced by Steven Spielberg, that became more essential than almost him directing a movie. Because if you look at the following and sort of the presence of the Spielbergian vision, the Spielbergian idea, the Spielbergian ability to bring a family and to make money, Back to the Future, which he produced, all three of them. Oh God, what is the
thing that he?
There's tons. So many movies with aliens and with Men in Black. Men in Black. He didn't direct that, but it's a very Spielbergian movie.
But he produced it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's just put his name on so many movies, which are not as great as a lot of the movies that he's made, or not even nearly as good or as original. But it's the idea of this larger Spielbergian concept, which is kind of where he got his name, his ability to bring money, which a lot of people attribute with success or that it's a good movie, is sort of this news that they read about him in the newspaper, like, oh, it made so many dollars, therefore it must be a good movie. which is baffling to me. But at the same time, I mean, that's just sort of how our economy and how our society works. If you look at a movie like The Color Purple, which won Best Picture, I mean, and this is the case with Schindler's List.
He directed Color Purple.
He did.
Right?
He directed The Color Purple, and he also directed Schindler's List. Both movies both movies whose box office take is much smaller, but they're considered as more artistic achievements. But people sort of were like irrelevant to that because it's beside the sort of the larger entertainment value of what Spielberg represents in American cinema. And overseas, he's respected incredibly well. He's he's right next to like Scorsese and Jim Jarmusch and some of these other people. He's considered this American master in Europe as having this sort of one-dimensional view of storytelling. And I sort of broke that down into a couple of themes that there's always a mysticism to his films. There's always this sort of awe of like this childhood perspective of things. Oh, that is Carl Bogner. Let's get him on the line.
Hello, Carl.
Zoff, hello. It's Carl Bogner.
Hi, Carl. You're on with me and Gabe, and we just started talking about Spielberg and his work.
Spielberg, heard of him? Hey, Gabe.
Hi, Carl. How you doing?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Although
good.
You all sound like Zoff.
Well, we sound pretty different, right, Gabe?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, there's Gabe. Oh, hi, Gabe.
Hi.
Carl, you watched The War Horse, right?
Is it called The War Horse?
It's just War Horse.
War Horse, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So Spielberg is not known for his use of indefinite articles.
That's correct.
Oh, is that so?
It's not called The Jaws, for instance.
Which it could have been.
Could have been.
The E.T.
The Close Encounters.
The Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I guess it is The Color Purple, but it's not.
That's the only one.
Yeah. Is it called War of the Worlds or The War of the Worlds?
War of the Worlds.
See?
He's right.
Yeah. Well, do you have an opinion about that? Does that say something?
Not The Duel. Well, I think it testifies to his there's something kind of grandiose in some direction. Or maybe it's actually a trace of modesty, War Horse. There are other war horses. This isn't the war horse.
I see.
Sort of like
Perhaps.
Casually offering it at a cocktail party as a benefit at George Clooney's house. Just sort of like, oh, and by the way, there's this film about World War I that I made called War Horse.
I think that's exactly the pitch.
Okay, well, what did you think of War Horse? How about we just start right off?
Oh, that's such a large question. Well, I wish I had seen The War Horse in the movie theater. I just watched it on the DVD.
Yeah.
And, the vistas must have been so commanding on the screen. Because that's where it seemed like a lot of the energy was towards, creating these, like the one shot of the British soldiers. I think they're leaving early in the morning, and it's a beautiful shot of them walking. Was it through some kind of covering, and they're reflected on the water?
And the sound in that shot is amazing too. You can hear the wind blowing right through the trees, and it really transports you. You feel like you're there. I'd say it's one of the two great moments in the film. I'd completely agree with that.
Had you seen it in the theater, Gabe?
I did not. I watched it at home on my laptop, on my chest, like about 6 inches away from my face, which when I have to watch a movie at home, I blare my headphones as loud as I can, and I bring the screen as cancerously close to my eyes as I can to sort of imitate.
Wait, hold on. You can get cancer?
Oh, from a laptop? Oh, yeah. No. They burn your eye. I'm almost certain that I'm probably going to get a brain tumor before I'm 40. Eye cancer or brain.
I'll watch it on my laptop under electrical power lines, figuring I'd be okay. But I watched on a laptop too without headphones, so I wasn't that sensitive to the sound. What was the other scene that you think is comparably striking?
I thought for sure his ability to look at things with this sort of impeccably ugly eye, but to make it beautiful, like the scenes in the trenches, and when they were pulling when you saw the glimmer of the horse in those shadows. I mean, it's really like a like a Vilmos Zsigmond. It's a thing that only he can do that well, to give that many tones of gray, that many shades of blue, that many like just indulgences of brown. It's really, really enchanting at how he sort of he gives an accuracy to filth, but he also gives it a charm, and he gives it like a bitter authenticity, which, considering that a lot of his films are aimed at being shown to children, is really shocking in the diversity. I mean, in the duality of showing something that's awful and can make you cry, but at the same time reminds you of the endurance of the living spirit. I mean, and despite all the cliches in this movie, I thought that moments like that made up for so many of the overly John Williams, scored scenes.
It'd be nice to see him shuck John Williams for a movie to see what would happen.
Shoot a silent film.
What's the name of the cinematographer? That guy's pretty amazing.
Vilmos Zsigmond, who's made other. I mean, he's really good with the prairie settings. He's like Woody Allen in that he works with a set team. On every film.
Zsigmond shot this film.
I believe yes. Vilmos did.
I thought it was that Polish emigre Janusz. I don't have my DVD.
Janusz Kaminski.
Yeah, didn't he shoot this? I thought he's been working with him for the last few films. Like, I know he shot War of the Worlds, and he shot the airport movie, The Terminal.
The Terminal, yeah.
There's another one, The Terminal.
I know he did. Yeah, I know he did work. I know he worked on those. On his early 2000 work was all with Janusz. That is correct.
Zsigmond did Close Encounters, I believe.
You're right. Yeah, well, there was actually a record amount of cinematographers that worked on that movie. There were 11 cinematographers that worked on Close Encounters, which I find shocking, because if you look at it, it looks like such a casual and such a natural movie that when you think about it, like, well, where did one cinematographer stop and why did another one? And then you realize, like, this was the age before computers, when if you wanted something done, you had to sit down and go, okay, guys, how the hell are we going to do this? And
I don't think all the cinematographers were allowed onto the mothership. It was just like protocol.
Oh man,
they didn't have the visions. Zav, are you like IMDbing these things?
Well, Janusz Kaminski is the cinematographer
for Warhorse.
On Warhorse, yeah.
I'm sorry, audience out there, but it is Janusz Kaminski, whose style is very similar to Vilmos Zsigmond, but that is an error on my part. I apologize for that.
I thought the cinematography was something I'd not seen yet in cinema. It seemed new to me, and I wonder if something technological, if there was some technological breakthrough that involves the look of Warhorse. I really love the scenes on the hills, the opening parts.
In Ireland?
Yeah.
Where it is?
Is it in Ireland? It was in
or the English countryside.
I thought it was Ireland, but apparently it was England. I deduced that after you realized that they didn't have to cross a boat anywhere, and because they all sounded Irish, and I mean there was like
I thought so too.
There was this sort of like this gap in the logic, and I got to say that was something that really bugged me about Warhorse, was that there was definite gaps in the logic between scenes. Like, you would have this sort of stark, really haunting, bitter emotional realism, and then you would just have sort of these fluffy scenes of just like, well, but life is so wonderful, and isn't it just, and we're just, having such a gay old time. And then, and then the reminder of war. It's just so cliched, but I felt like the larger idea, and the fact that this was one of the more brutal World War I movies I've ever seen, really made up for that. The ending, I thought, was atrocious. I thought that all the stuff with the French grandfather and the French granddaughter was atrocious. Though it had some charm and it was essential for the story to develop, especially, between the second act and the third act. But Spielberg, I think, really, and Zav and I were talking about this, like, he sort of had like a resurgence with that dystopian stuff that he made in the early 2000s with Minority Report and with War of the Worlds, sort of this really sort of bleak vision of everything, of politics, of the world, of technology. And I think that he kind of brought some of that back with this film, and he brought back some of the schmaltz of his mid-2000 period with Catch Me If You Can and The Terminal, which I found to be much lesser films than Tintin and Warhorse, but he couldn't decide what he was going for, and I feel like because of that, it's not his greatest achievement, but it's definitely far from his worst. But overall, I thought it was an enchanting film, much better than I was.
You're right about that. There's this like really strenuous preoccupation with the reunion of the family. I mean, it's one of the things that, like, I agree. I think there's parts of, say, War of the Worlds that are really thrilling and scary and cataclysmic. I mean, there's some of my favorite disasters in that film. but then it has this reunion which sort of strains credulity, and seems to be the climax of one character saying "Dad" to another. And even in this movie, I mean, like even more than the reunion of the boy and his horse, it's more about the family unit under the horse's approving eye.
Right. I feel like the horse was kind of like. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm not.
But you know what's? I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say the horse, because I watched E.T. For the first time right after War Horse. I kind of thought that in a sense the horse was a little bit like E.T. That it was this that the boy was kind of like Elliot, but older, and that the horse was this creature that was kind of all knowing and had a lot of heart and kind of brought the family together.
Yeah.
One thing real quick, what I noticed too is that one thing that might almost solidify Close Encounters as maybe Spielberg's most genuine work of art is the fact that the breakup of the family in that movie is sort of treated as this side note. There's no values placed on the fact that because of his obsessiveness and his determination to find truth and wisdom and what's right, the family unit happens to break up. He loses his kids. He's probably going to lose his house. He lost his wife, but that's treated as a side note. And the family never reunites at the end. And in fact, he embraces that fellow believer. And there's this really like awesome, inspiring. I think the best moment in Close Encounters is when they finally kiss and they're on that mountaintop, and you just have that urgency, and they're with that stranger, that guy that's wandering up the hill with them, and they're just like, there's just this like unspecial effecty momentum to it where you're just like. Life falls apart. Everything sort of falls apart. We're just monsters wading through this awful thing known as culture. But then you get that ending where it's just like, and it still turns out to be beautiful. Yeah.
No, I think it was nice with your all's invitation for me to participate, just sort of reviewing my feelings about his films. And I know Close Encounters, I think be my favorite. Do I mean that? I don't know. I guess I'm still thinking about it. But I do think in part, if it's still, it was a really big movie for me in high school. I mean, we had camps. There were those who liked Star Wars. There were those who liked Close Encounters. And those of us who like Close Encounters fancied ourselves more intellectual, I guess, because we knew how to pronounce Francois Truffaut. But watching it, I remember when the special edition came out with some added scenes, and you got to go inside the mothership. The special edition also had more harrowing scenes of the breakup of the family. I also must confess that I think Terry Garr is one of the greatest gifts to American cinema.
Agreed.
Criminally underutilized, and she. I also think Melinda Dillon is amazing, also. But I felt like those scenes. I guess that they. Like after all of these decades of his work, those family scenes feel like the sharpest, the most discordant, the least, as you mentioned, the only ones that are never resolved. Or he has to leave the world. He can't be reunited with his family. But one thing I was going to say earlier about like the beautiful cinematography, I guess that's a thing for me with him, is that I feel like the dystopian aspect never quite registers because it's always such a spectacle to look at. I mean, I can remember the texture of the sand on the soldiers' backsides after they land on Normandy Beach in Saving Private Ryan. I remember just thinking like that looks beautiful. And this is even with all the jagged editing and the scary violence of that, it was. I just thought. I don't know. I don't think he successfully operates in those registers at the same time, and he always opts for movie magic over anything else. I feel.
Yeah.
Genuinity. I feel like he goes, like you said, for magical moments, for these but in the end it always ends up feeling like sort of like a more polished version of the film Crash. And it's like I just want to scream at the screen sometimes. Life doesn't work that way.
Right.
Things don't happen that way. And I get it. It's just a movie. But what I love about movies is when it emanates real life and it makes it powerful. It reminds you of why the awful moments in life are still worth living. And he does that. Like, I feel like every other film, he sort of gets back to that. Like, and I feel like, and I mean, personally, a lot of people that are going to disagree with this, War of the Worlds is my favorite Spielberg film because it's such a genuine action film. It's a genuine disaster film, but he created a new look. And he did things with cinema that had never been done. That scene in the van where the camera literally swirls around it, it creates such a claustrophobia, and it's an actual special effect. It's not just special effects. It's not just computer shit. It actually, I mean, I was looking at the audience while I was watching that scene, and everyone's moving with the camera from like sort of like the scene in Rosemary's Baby where like everyone turns to the right to see what's behind the door.
Right.
I mean, literally, I mean, the audience was just like you were in the car with them. It was amazing. And I feel like there's a lot of moments in that. And the fact that in that movie, too, there's a lot of disresolution. You never find out really how the aliens got down, how it all worked out, and why they're trying to, you know, despite that awful narration by Morgan Freeman, there's a lot of mystery to it. I mean,
I could never understand why Tom Cruise's car could start.
Oh, God. Just beyond stupid.
Even there.
It was anyway.
I want to ask Zob, follow up on Zob's question, because I had a question about the technique in Warhorse also. I mean, I couldn't tell the extent that I was looking at CGI. You know, like sometimes when I'd see figures in like these great landscapes, usually in the place that I was calling Ireland, but I guess we now know it's England. Like I thought there was something so sharp, but also, I don't know. Was there CGI involved?
I think it's just that he shot on film.
To be honest with you, I don't know. I know that he was using huge lenses because I saw some production stills or whatever, and the lens that they must be using the best possible lenses you can get. And then I wonder if it's maybe it's digital, but are you saying it was film?
I think it's because Spielberg insists on shooting on film. He and Scorsese are adamant that they will not shoot on digital.
If he insists on shooting on film, then he's just using the same medium that's always been used, but somehow this looks different.
Yeah, and like in the same way that Hugo, you know, had like
absolutely
these, special effects sequences that I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, some of it has to do with just. I mean, I guess when I watch one of his films, the thing that I'm waiting for or looking for is a feeling of what I guess I'm calling authenticity.
Right.
And so I guess I find myself. After decades of watching his stuff, just kind of wary of encountering one of his images, and so that's what I wonder if my preoccupation, like, is this CGI or is this flesh and blood? Is just like part of a larger question, or a smaller question I might have when I watch it.
I almost think at this point it's almost impossible to not use CGI in films like this. That it may be something that happens in the post-production, where it would be maybe almost unnoticeable, but just enhancing of the image somehow. But, you know, in another way, and my honest answer is I really don't know, but in another way, there was something really reminiscent of early Disney, or I guess 60s maybe Disney era films like Black Beauty and Chitty Bang Bang. For me, there was I feel like there's something about it that was also kind of nostalgic. I don't know if you guys picked up on that at all.
I guess the movie that I felt like I was supposed to see to understand the logic of the compositions is John Ford's How Green Was My Valley.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, it felt like even more nostalgic than the movies that you were citing. So, I mean, I guess I was thinking of wondering about, I should have watched some John Ford again. And How Green Was My Valley, I think, I'm pretty sure that takes place in Ireland, which may have been part of my confusion over where things were. But just some of those, like those really florid, are they sunrises or sunsets where the sky is so orange and these figures silhouetted against the sky? I mean, it's almost Gone with the Wind. And I think
exactly. That's exactly what I thought it was a huge ripoff of at the end, which is I started actually hitting my thigh at the end because I was like, okay, so you're going Godfather Golden, and you're ripping off Gone with the Wind. Okay, all right, Spielberg. All right, dude, I get it. This, and I was just like, this ending is just. I was shaking. I was so mad, but I was like, you know what? This is still a really powerful film that I cried at. I cried during at least 3 times.
Yeah, me too.
So, I don't think I cried, but I watched it in parts.
Zav, you never cry.
No, I cry all the time. I cried. Yeah.
I was also watching it at a stable with some horse friends of mine. So,
you know, I might be lying. Maybe I did cry and I forgot that I cried. I've been watching a lot of movies, and
so in the larger context, I guess of Spielberg. I guess another thing I wanted to talk about was his producing credentials and sort of this idea of the Spielberg. We were talking about that before about about the idea of the Spielberg
beyond the director,
and sort of the idea and the family friendliness and the box office success that comes with his name. With Steven Spielberg Presents Men in Black.
He's presenting Men in Black.
Men in Black. He's been the executive producer on all three of them.
American Tail,
Transformers, An American Tail, the Alien film from 1987 with the family with Jessica Tandy, which the name escapes me right now. The Back to the Future films. I mean, just this idea of this family friendliness and this sort of larger than lifeness. And it's like if you put his name on your movie is guaranteed all this money and all this sort of artistic acceptance or this acceptance in culture for some reason. And I feel like he's really strayed away even from just this sort of so mainstreamness with the three Transformers films, which every year have consistently been one of the, if not the worst film of the year, one of the worst films of the year, but also the highest grossing film of the year.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's karma. It's kind of caught up with him because the movies he produced last year weren't very good and they didn't gross much money either. So he didn't get critical success or box office success with Super 8 and with Cowboys and Aliens. And I got to say, Cowboys and Aliens is one of the most nauseatingly bad movies I've seen in years.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
I was going to ask what you thought of Super 8, which sounded... I mean, I wanted to see it because I understood it as being a movie that was expressing like an homage to Spielberg or like sort of a nostalgia for Spielberg's films. And I also heard it was pretty good, but...
It was a great idea. Yeah, I'd say it was a great idea that the last third completely fell apart. It went into silliness mode, and it really took something that's quite beautiful and quite awe-inspiring, and it just sort of threw it together with a bunch of formulas. It was really disappointing for me because I thought it could have been a really haunting movie, and it could have been a powerful film, and it ended up just being kind of at best an entertaining film, but it wasn't even entertaining for me. But I could see how a lot of people would have loved it as fluff. But I just thought it was such a waste of everyone's time involved, considering how many talented people were involved in it. I was just like, why this? Like this literally should have just been an online short, and it would have been so much better. So,
hey, Gabe, do you know how did I know Warhorse got nominated for Best Picture and some Oscars? How did it do in terms of box office?
Warhorse was moderately successful. Both films were hugely disappointing though in their returns from what they were expecting. They were released on the same weekend and in limited release, but their major releases were on the same week from different studios too. Tintin was a huge disappointment, and Warhorse opened up second or third, and it just sort of piddled out. I think it didn't even cross the $100 million mark. And Warhorse didn't resonate with audiences because there wasn't a word of mouth on it after it came out, which I found strange considering that its critical reception was extremely high and extremely positive.
Right.
But I think it was just the fact of this over advertising. People seemed like they were burned out on the name Steven Spielberg by the end of last year, after Super 8, after Transformers 3, after Cowboys and Aliens, and after the dual advertising of Tintin and Warhorse. I think people just were like, I want nothing to do with this crap anymore. And it just didn't work in his favor, unfortunately.
I was going to ask, do you think there's a waning of the brand?
Yes.
Of the brand Spielberg?
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of... I'm wondering where that's going to go, because this year he's got Men in Black 3 coming out, and...
he has 7 things in production when I looked on IMDb. 7 things happening right now.
Lincoln's coming out soon, too.
Oh, my gosh. Lincoln. Is that with Daniel Day-Lewis?
Yes, finally, after like 10 years of pre-production.
And this is the one where he hunts vampires?
No. I wish he was directing that.
Oh.
But no. That's Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which comes out...
Oh, yeah. I just make a joke. That's any day now, right?
That comes out in June. I think the middle / the end of June. And then
I'm sorry.
Oh, and then Men in Black 3 is coming out at the end of May. And that's
next Monday night is the season finale of season 1 of the hit TV show Smash, produced by Steven Spielberg. Are you not interested in his forays into television and his this is like a post Glee sometimes musical show.
Yeah.
So I think it's doing well. Or I'm going to watch the season finale. Uma Thurman got poisoned by a peanut in the last episode. Anyway, I digress.
Oh my god.
but I guess that's the only brush I've otherwise had with Spielberg. But Zav, you say he has 7 things coming out.
Mm-hmm. Well, he has seven things that he's working that are like credited to him and that are being worked on. So he's got an untitled Transformers sequel that has been announced. Real Steel 2 has been announced. Jurassic Park 4
my God.
has been announced. And then in pre-production, he has Robopocalypse
is supposed to be really good, actually. But I think that's going to be a return to his dystopian future stuff. So I'm looking forward to that.
And then there's When Worlds Collide, pre-production. The Talisman is in pre-production, and then Lincoln's in post-production, and Men in Black 3. Oh no, that's already out, I guess.
Oh boy.
Not to mention Falling Skies is ending pretty soon too on television, which he's executive producer on.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So he's all over the place. I just remembered another movie which is sort of anomalous for him and may dovetail with your talk of dystopian. But Munich. Did you guys see that one?
Yes.
I don't know if I saw it.
Zav doesn't remember if he's seen it. That's what's so adorable about Zav.
Well, I see things. I play movies while I'm working, so I've had a zillion movies play while I'm working, but it's like I have a half a brain when I'm watching them. So,
Carl, what's your opinion on Munich?
Well, for one, I think Zav's fashion sense is a lot like Tony Bana. What's his name? Eric Bana's fashion sense. I think of both the tightness and the strikeness of pants Zav wears reflect the garb of Israeli Mossad agents in the late 70s.
I take that as a compliment.
I actually have to agree with you on that one. That's really...
That just occurred to me.
Sure.
Munich, I remember I wanted to like it more. I was impressed by its seriousness. I mean, that was a movie for me that I didn't feel like his interest in movie magic, got in the way. Like his restaging of the, kind of like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, his restaging of the terrorist attack at the Munich Olympics was pretty harrowing. And also, it has one of the genuinely strangest sequences I've ever seen in a Spielberg film, where Eric Bana's character is having a flashback about the Munich attack while he's having sex with his wife.
Yes.
Remember that ending? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's impossible to get your mind around. But it also ends with this amazing CGI effect where Spielberg shows the Twin Towers. Like there's some sort of, ominous talk of things to come, and in the background you see the World Trade Center. So I don't know. What did you think of it, Gabe? I clearly haven't digested it successfully.
I have to agree with you on the fact that I wanted to like it so much more than I did. I thought it was I thought it was a brilliant action film, and it's maybe the first real action film that Spielberg's ever made. Guys with guns. But I feel like it can't figure out if it's entertainment, or if it's intelligent entertainment, or if it's an informative film. It can't decide between the two, and those edges really, it ends up being this grown-up child, which is what Spielberg really is in my mind, playing with knives, and at the end of it, you're sort of left with these just cut-up wrists, and you're like, well, I think that was important. I think it was entertaining. I think it was awesome, and I think it was really cool that he made all these statements against Israel, even though he's he's like the most famous Jew in the world. But I just got the feeling like that isn't cool enough to validate me saying that, that movie's friggin' awesome, and it's also at the same time it's not ballsy enough for me to be like, that's an important film. I just sort of feel like it's a film that wanted to be so important that I ended up just I've watched it twice because it's almost a movie that I'd rather watch with the sound off, because I think the shot structure of the film, and like you said, some of the choices he made with post-production editing, and some of the less viewer-friendly choices that he made with a lot of the shots, the angles, very un-Spielbergian, a little more natural looking and a little more handheld. And really uncomfortable. There's definitely a genuine sense of unease throughout that whole movie where you just can't sit still. You're like, what's wrong with this movie? And I think it works in its favor and against its favor alternatively. However, is it better than 90% of movies that come out? Absolutely. But in terms of what I expect from Spielberg's best, and even from his worst, I just was left with this sort of Listerine taste in my mouth at the end of it both times I saw it.
Yeah, it's kind of droopy and ponderous, ultimately. It's no Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And, it's got Tony Kushner writing the screenplay. It's got this amazing international cast. Like Daniel Craig is in it also, right? And all these familiar European actors who I can never recognize, or whose names I don't know.
Jeffrey Rush has a great role in it too.
What's that?
Jeffrey Rush has a great role in it. He might be he might be my favorite, actually.
Hey, gentlemen, I hate to disappear like.
That's perfect.
Of course, but and if any of your listeners want to see the Spielbergs of tomorrow, the Student Film Festival is about to start for free at the UWM Theater. Am I allowed to make a plug?
Oh yeah,
no,
please.
you are. Please do.
Okay. But anyway, I gotta meet some people. We've got some incoming students here, so I gotta transition.
That's perfect.
Carl, thank you so much.
Thanks for letting me have a part of this. You guys are great people to talk to about movies, so thank you for inviting me.
Carl, we look forward to having you back.
Hopefully we'll see you again. Maybe in 2 weeks. We talked about doing a show with you.
That'd be great. And if I can talk to my friends at the stable, if it relates to them, maybe you can call me there next time.
Okay.
One of the horses I was with thought, was that Fred Savage's voice that did the voice of Warhorse? Do you know? I'm just joking. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Okay, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
That's just fantastic. Carl Bogner, the one and only Carl Bogner, the head of the UWM film department. Best lecturer I have ever seen, best speaker I've ever seen. Jacked up on coffee, 7 a.m., walking around in tight blue jeans. And I got to say, he has the most affectionate and endearing and perfectly poised, use of what I consider the great punctuation point, The one and only Carl Bogner, whose film opinion I find invaluable and maybe the best that I know.
Yeah. No, that's why. I mean, I'm almost speechless next to you and Carl, because you guys are both so knowledgeable about all the actors and film information. I'm just like,
but your opinion,
I love listening to you guys talk.
Your opinion is what I really value, because as kind of someone who's immersed in this film culture and knows deep in it, you have this ability to disconnect yourself somehow, and sort of like I feel like your consciousness is always above and to the right of everything that's going on. So you can kind of look at it from this third person sort of astral projected point of view and go, well, actually, I'm sorry, that's kind of backwards. And here's why.
Well, on that point, I mean, maybe I'm to the side, but I don't know if I'm above. But the thing is that I did want to bring up the politics aspect of Spielberg. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was his war and violence tends to be a big part of Spielberg's work, and he's that plays into the fact that he's so good at action sequences and so on. And I want to ask you, Gabe, what do you think of his representation of war, and where that's going in terms of sort of like the bigger picture politically? I guess I'll you answer, and then it's kind of a leading question because I have an opinion about it.
Sure. I feel that Spielberg uses war to make money. I feel it's kind of pathetic, to be honest. I feel like he, we didn't even talk about Schindler's List. This is amazing.
We didn't talk about Tintin at all.
We didn't talk about Tintin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we still have to talk about the Burmese harp.
Oh my God.
Which actually dovetails well into this discussion, because I can talk about that as well.
That's a great war film. From what I've read about it, I did not. I actually saw the first 20 minutes of it, and I just have been too busy. But anyway, I feel that Spielberg makes money off of awful things, and I feel like he tries to make these he prettifies things, and he tries to contextualize things. He makes things easy for high school students to watch, to absorb, and to not feel uncomfortable. He makes things so parents can take their kids to go see things that are too challenging for them to talk about in their own context, but have someone else explain in this very sort of ghastly beautiful way. I feel that Schindler's List, the reason that it kind of has validity is because, like the miniseries Holocaust, it informed a lot of people of things of the Holocaust and of things that they didn't know about. It literally was an informative film, but it's the fact that he's sort of, in Chance War, he makes war beautiful. He makes these awful things watchable, and I feel that that's not what war is like. That's not what the awful side of life is like. And I give him credit that he always has this resilience of family. He has the resilience of not just the human spirit, but the living spirit, which I felt was a theme that he touched on in Warhorse.
And childhood.
And childhood and the awe of childhood. And even though, these awful things are happening, that you still have the uniqueness of having senses, of being alive, that you are still alive. And I feel that that's a great thing to have and to pass on and to create as this endearing legacy of that after Spielberg's gone. I think he'll still be looked at as this sort of touching figure. But at the same time, it's just I just feel it's not good enough. And I feel that goring Private Ryan doesn't justify how melodramatic and maudlin and ultimately boring the story and the storytelling of that film ends up being. I feel that Munich fell prey to that. It ends up just getting too wrapped up in its boring story. And I feel that Warhorse kind of got caught up in that with all these subplots and all these side stories, which were interesting, but I feel that they were too talky. And in the end, you lost steam with what was really important about the film, which was the incredible journey of this horse. The greatest moments in that movie were the silent moments where the horse is just doing things, where things are happening without having to explain why they're happening.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the Warhorse did remind me of. Now I'm going to forget the name of the film. Darn it, I can't remember. But there's it's a Renoir film, I believe, and it's the whole film. No, it's not Renoir. I'm not going to remember the title, but anyway, it's all about a donkey. Do you know the film I'm talking about? Balthazar. Yeah, and I was thinking about Balthazar when I was watching Warhorse.
Bresson made that.
Bresson, yeah. And how Bresson, I feel, did a better job of what he was, saying with using the vehicle of this, this animal. Labor animal, this draft animal to convey sort of a story about humanity, and Warhorse had some of those things that were just totally irritating to me, where he had to anthropomorphize the horse.
Exactly.
And it's
exactly.
You could, if he just tried a little harder, or if he was willing to take a little more of a risk
to make it just a horse,
take more of a risk with the public, and not make the horse a
human or a child,
human, right? A
or
person.
A child,
yeah. And there were it was just a few times that he did that just kind of irritated me, like where the horse ran to the other horse's rest, to be a hero and come to save his other horse. I'm not a horse person. I don't know if horses actually do that, but it didn't seem realistic to me.
The only CGI I did notice in Warhorse was the scene when the grandfather buys the horse and the horse looks back at the boy. That was clearly CGI, post-production CGI, and then they infused it with an actual shot of the horse. They probably just couldn't get the horse to look sideways. So Spielberg probably just said, we'll do it in post-production. But I thought that the fact that was noticeably fake, I thought was really, really, really sort of beautifully coincidental with what I was noticing about what I didn't like, what was too saturating about that movie, with sort of this child looking back at his father as he's carted away with a foster parent or something. And I feel that was really the downfall, where it's like his early work, it's like that's sort of irrelevant. All this other stuff, it's like, no, the ghastly nature of life is what it is. The only resolution in Jaws is that the two guys make it back alive, that they swim to shore, and even that's kind of the ending shot of that movie is kind of grotesque, and it's gray and it's raining and it's kind of filthy. The beach is just littered with stuff. Robert Shaw gets his legs bitten off. I mean, I feel that's when he was the biggest that Spielberg's ever been, but also the realist. And I hate to say, I like my friend Larry Collins always says, I like their early work better, as a joke. He makes fun of people who always talk about people's early work, filmmakers, musicians and stuff like that. But I feel like with his case, that's true. The Burmese Harp.
Okay.
Quick review.
Yeah, we've got, because Onion Breath Theater is coming on in 2 minutes, or we need to start getting off stage in 2 minutes. Basically, what I wanted to say about the Burmese Harp is that there's a part of me that really loved it. It's a beautiful film. The music in it is incredible. It's I don't know the details actually off the top of my head. I didn't write them down, but it's a new Criterion release, but of an old film. I think it's 1956. Okay, and there is something really poetic and beautiful about the film. At the same time, I don't think it was the most. In some ways, there's a little part of when something's old and black and white and from another culture, we can give it too much credit, and I don't want to give it too much credit. There's a lot of it's a little bit shoddy in certain ways. The storytelling is a little shoddy as well, because it's an adaptation of a book that was actually for children, and then they kind of...
What is the plot?
Well, let me quickly think. It's a soldier who plays the harp with his platoon. It's World War II in Burma, so it's Japanese in Burma, and they're fighting with the with the British, and the platoon to like bring up morale. The platoon leader knows how to do chorus, and so he teaches all his soldiers how to sing, and this one guy plays the harp. At a certain point, the harpist disappears, and the platoon thinks he dies, but what actually happens is he kind of sees the horror of war, and then goes on to go around the country in Burma burying all the dead soldiers from Japan who didn't get proper burials, and he becomes like a Buddhist monk, and that's what the plot is about. And it's a beautiful film, but like I say, there's shoddiness about it. That actually the Burmese aspect is sort of shoddy, because you can tell the Japanese are there, and they're kind of like the Burmese are working for them in the film production, and they're kind of going along with things, but at the same time, it just it felt a little bit low budget and not well. There were problems with the film, but ultimately it is a beautiful film, and I could see why it's considered a historical kind of masterpiece.
It's one of Kan Ichikawa's earlier films too, which explains some of the low budgetness. He's the guy that went on to direct Tokyo Olympiad.
Yep, and he did Fires on the Plane, which is another amazing anti-war film,
which is one of the 10 great anti-war films and the 10 great Japanese films.
Come and see the Russian film. I don't know if I don't know who the director is, but Come and See and Fires on the Plane to me are the most sort of scary horrifying war films that comes to my mind.
Sort of the antithesis of the Spielbergian war vision.
Exactly. They're antithetical to heroism and all of that stuff. It really just shows that war is a terrible thing and should not happen and should not be, glorified in any way. Right.
Or glorified.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get off the stage so that the Onion Breath Theater people can come on and do their thing.
Radio Theater.
And thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Checking in and archiving as well, and tell your friends. And thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. We'll see you. Bye.